The Circular Integrity Show, the premier podcast and information source for leaders in the ITAD and IT reseller community, with a focus on growth strategies, IT lifecycle services, and making sustainability profitable and beneficial to the environment.
Hi, welcome back to the Circular Integrity Show, the premier strategy and news source for the ITAD and IT reseller industries. I'm your host, Pete Paisley. In each episode, we'll bring you conversations with industry leaders who are transforming the business. Today, we're presenting part one of our end user series, where we interview IT asset managers, chief sustainability officers, and other end users sharing their critical perspectives on our ITAD business. In part one of our series, we have a wide-ranging and in-depth interview with Guilbeault, IT asset management evangelist and practitioner at Starbucks Coffee Company. Beau brings a rare dual perspective, years of experience working with major ITADs like HPE Financial Services, Arrow Electronics, and IT Renew. But for the past 6 years, as a leading ITAM managing assets for one of the world's most recognizable brands, with thousands of locations worldwide. We'll explore what it really takes to manage IT assets at scale, the biggest gaps in ITAD services, and why most providers get their sales pitch wrong. So if you're an ITAD leader, or in particular in ITAD sales, this conversation is packed with actionable insights you won't want to miss. Today, I'm thrilled to have Beau Guilbeault joining us. Beau's an IT asset management evangelist and practitioner at Starbucks, and he brings years of experience from the ITAD industry, having worked with companies like HPE Financial Services, Arrow Electronics, and IT Renew. Beau, we're glad to have you. Welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks, Pete. It's great to be here.
Yeah, maybe you could start by sharing a bit about your background that led to your current position with Starbucks.
Yeah, I'm a wily old industry veteran. Started my career selling software solutions for this little company called Microsoft. Then moved into the value-added reseller world, where to gain some hardware experience, where I was introduced to the ITAD industry. Had the opportunity to really work in the ITAD specific industry in the early 2000s. So back when we were defining the acronym ITAD, and nobody knew what it was until really the last 6 years, I've been directly involved with asset management for Starbucks Coffee Company.
So Beau, you've got this unique perspective. You've been on the ITAD side of the business for many years, and now you're on the enterprise side at one of the world's most recognizable brands. How does that experience shape how you approach IT asset management at Starbucks?
Well, it's really nice from the perspective that when suppliers of ITAD services call me, they don't have to, educate me on what ITAD actually means. But having been through the entire process and representing those services to companies such as Starbucks Coffee Company, I understand capabilities. I understand the different processes that are associated to supplying those suite of services at an enterprise level, as well as the financial mathematics that go along with it. I understand service fees are important. I understand revenue share is important, but I also understand the trials and tribulations of remarketing and selling mass quantities of devices out there as well. So if nothing else, I'm either really easy to negotiate with or I'm really hard, depending on your perspective.
Yeah, I think I get that. So let's dive into your role a little bit more. What are the primary assets you're responsible for today? I imagine with thousands of stores worldwide, it's quite a complex operations.
No, absolutely. And I have purview into the hardware across Starbucks Coffee Company, which, if you think about it, we have our retail store locations, we have our traditional corporate assets, And then we have data center related assets. As I mentioned, I have purview into all of the technologies that we're investing in. However, my primary focus has really been our 11,000 company owned stores that has the bulk of our asset spend involved with it.
Tell me a bit more about that production equipment in all your retail stores, like an espresso machine, for example.
So you're bringing up a really interesting conversation here, Pete, in the sense that when you walk into a Starbucks store, right, there's a lot of magic that goes behind our store partners out there that are brewing, the premier coffee of the world, right, and mixing the drinks the way that you want to have them. When you look at traditional facilities equipment like the Mastrenas, the espresso machines, the ovens that, do the food, things of that nature, they're starting to enter into that gray area. You have smart devices that are starting to enter into the business world. And so those are traditionally managed by facilities, and technology is its own bucket. And so right now we're at a crossroads, even at Starbucks Coffee Company, where those devices are certainly being reviewed by the technology to make sure that there's no opportunity for data excursion, and then obviously environmental considerations as is associated to those traditionally facilities managed devices.
Interesting. So
yeah, it's a crossroads, especially in the retail environment.
yeah, are you saying that as they come under kind of IP connected or IoT attached management, that they might fall more into your department than facilities over time?
Correct. I mean, we're of the mindset here at Starbucks Coffee Company for the IT asset management realm is that if a device takes up an IP address on your network, then you want to treat it as technology, because you've got data security, you've got hacking, you've got all kinds of elements that you want to take into consideration. So yes, that's how we do it at Starbucks.
Yeah, that's an interesting distinction. So let's talk about what happens when these or other assets under your management reach end of life.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us about some of the ways Starbucks handles retired assets.
Okay. So when you think about IT asset disposition, right, disposition can be one of three avenues. You've got reusage, so redeployment. So even though something equals an end of life, you really have to define what end of life means. We like to look at it as end of our production life. So as we transition, just because of our size and scale, we don't automatically just, take 10,000 of a particular device and overnight magically 10,000 disappear and 10,000 new ones show up. So there is a process. So we are very big in refurbishing and redeploying as part of Starbucks, and we have metrics that look at that. For other technologies that we know we are end of production, have appropriate break fix inventories, things of that nature, we look to remarket them on the secondary market, whether as whole units or parts. And then obviously the third level is the true recycling back into the raw material so that they can be reintroduced into the production environment. Starbucks absolutely positively is a company that we publicly stated that we are a planet positive company, and that is our goals for 2030. And I'm very pleased to report that from the technology side, we are reporting those metrics today. And have that data available. So we are, and that comes from having the experience of knowing what data elements to ask of the ITAD suppliers and the proof, right? The documents that actually prove what they say they're doing is being done.
Oh, in our prep, you mentioned using logistics partners for asset collection from both your retail stores and corporate locations. And it might surprise people that your ITAD partners don't handle the asset pickup. Can you tell us a little bit more about this strategy?
As you can imagine, Starbucks, like most corporations, we have a suite of services and processes that you want to do. So if you think about a store opening and a closure, we have service providers that help us with those aspects. And then the way that I look at the ITAD supplier, essentially is doing that end of life service. They're an extension of my IT team so that I can ensure that the devices that we deinstalled from a store location are in fact received. And then they use their expertise in determining, well, are they still functional? Are they refurbishable? Are they repairable? Or do they need to be recycled? And so basically what we do is, because just of our sheer size and geographic locations, we segment away the element of logistics so that, and make no mistake, at each point, we have documentation, serialized reporting of devices that our third-party suppliers are touching and removing from a Starbucks facility. And then we cross-check that against the receipt reports from our ITAD supplier. That way we know we can very quickly and easily, if something is missing, backtrack. And it also helps the fact that the ITAD supplier, sometimes it's kind of the wolf watching the chicken coop, right?
Sure. And one of the things that struck me as we did some of the prep for this episode was you mentioned that, let's be real, there's not a lot of ITADs that have the geographical coverage a Starbucks retail organization is going to use.
Yeah. As I mentioned to you, I mean, my dream for Starbucks Coffee Company is that we would be able to do business with those ITAD suppliers, right, in the similar cities of where we have stores, and theoretically you can do that. It becomes a managerial nightmare. And so, we have to take into consideration when we're looking at third-party suppliers, specifically for ITAD services, you can measure it in a lot of different ways. So one is, how financially big are they? What does it look like? Two, what is their geographical footprint or square footage of processing and, capabilities? Then another metric is how tenured are the companies and clients that they have, and do they have experience? So we take all of those things into consideration. And because of the fact that we do a heavy refurbishment and reusage, we are very, very meticulous on who we choose to be our ITAD suppliers.
Let me ask too, for end user compute devices or mobility, laptops, maybe mobility products, do you use a box program for some of those, and how do those work for you? Do they work well?
So the answer to that question is, as you can imagine, we have a lot of remote devices such as that, and we do use a box program. And I think it's typical with a lot of other large organizations.
So I wanted to ask too, once the items reach your ITAD partners, tell me a little bit more how that relationship works functionally and economically.
Sure. So as you can imagine, a Fortune 500 company, the word is transparency, right? So we negotiate a very detailed, oriented statement of work. We do negotiate service fees. Okay. And we also negotiate a revenue share. But what's also unique in our contract is we reserve the right to sell our own equipment free of any type of revenue share. So that's probably a little more than 99.99% of the contracts out there, but that's only due to my specific experience in the industry.
Yeah, that makes sense. So in that scenario, for example, the ITAD might process the gear and they'd recover commensurate fees for doing that, but you might handle the actual downstream sale from there and they do the fulfillment, I suppose, for instance.
That's correct. That's correct.
Cool. Now,
so they're acting as a virtual warehouse.
Right. Yeah. I want to ask about repair. Do you keep assets under OEM maintenance or use third-party providers?
We do a little bit of everything. So we do have OEM repair contracts, and then we do have what we call thresholds for those organizations that are certified to be able to repair specific OEMs. And then we would look to our supplier base, right, to validate. So we track our warranty within our asset management system. So we have a really good idea down to the serial number of devices that still are under some type of a warranty. And then once they've exceeded the warranty, then we have a threshold for repair. And then anything beyond that ultimately goes to, the appropriate channel of recycling or what have you. We have a mixture of them all. Our ITAD suppliers do provide break-fix services for us. I can't remember what the percentages are, but they do where they can.
And you kind of mentioned it before. What IT asset management software platform do you use at Starbucks primarily?
Well, as most Fortune 500 companies, we're using the one that everybody likes to talk about, which is ServiceNow.
Here's what we often hear. We don't need ISO or other certifications right now, or our clients aren't asking for it. Just because it's not needed today doesn't mean it won't be required tomorrow. Certifications usually take 7 to 16 weeks to complete, that's 2 to 4 months. If a client suddenly requires it, waiting isn't an option. These certifications help you qualify faster for global and OEM contracts. Keeps your operations audit ready all year. Cuts internal waste and rework. Builds trust with buyers before price is even discussed. For example, a U.S. plastics and machinery manufacturer invested $8,000 in ISO 9001 plus ISO 14001. The next quarter, they qualified for 2 OEM contracts worth $240,000. Another firm in the same space skipped certification and couldn't even bid. ISO isn't an expense, it's proof you're ready when opportunity knocks. Don't wait for a client to demand it be the one already certified. Book your free consultation today with MG Environmental Consulting.
Bo, I know that iMac work, install, move, add, change is a big part of IT lifecycle management. And you kind of inferred it before when you talk about using your service providers the way that you do. How prevalent is iMac work for your department?
Well, in retail, it's a very large effort. As you can imagine, there's more than one device in 11,000 locations, and any type of a device failure and or non-functionality can impact our store operations dramatically. So our in retail in specific, it's a very large effort. In the corporate structure, we definitively have our percentages of troubles, but those are really more like user software related, not so much the hardware.
Sure. So in some of our prior conversation and our prep again, we talked about these iMac services and how they might be an opportunity for ITADs. Maybe talk a little bit more about how it might make sense for you to use an ITAD for certain functions related to iMac than your own internal IT staff.
Yeah, I think that you have a really good suggestion there. It really depends, first and foremost, if there is an OEM certification process for repair so that, the ITAD supplier can garner a certification, right, to prove at least baseline knowledge of how to properly repair a device. I think that absolutely is a bare minimum to enter into the fray. But it really is going to depend on the asset device type and the geographical location because, if you think of a Starbucks, right, we're in every state, doggone near every city, major city for sure. And so the difficulty becomes, are you using logistics to send things back and forth, or is the criticality of the repair going to necessitate an actual visit? So I think that the opportunity for the ITAD players for the vast majority of corporate devices, absolutely positively there, especially if you're in a particular mileage radius of your customer. Because let's face it, right? Who better to determine disposition path? Do I repair it? You don't want to spend $300 repairing a $50 device. Right. So that's something that an ITAD supplier may very well have the metrics and the mathematics to go, it really doesn't make sense to repair this device. Let me go ahead. And since we're already handling your other inventory, we have these devices on hand. And, oh, by the way, I happen to bring one with me in my truck. So, you can very easily do a replace. So absolutely, positively, I think it's an opportunity.
Bo, speaking of opportunities, where do you see some of the biggest gaps for retailers and enterprise ITAMs like yourself in terms of services needed from the IT reseller or ITAD provider community?
Fantastic question, Pete. Hands down, it's going to be ERP and data reporting. Essentially, it's not that data isn't available, but what we really need is automation via API. And basically, a lot of the ITAD suppliers out there today, they're real good at pushing particular type of data points. However, when you think about trying to integrate that to minimize human error, that is a big, big gap right now. So, for example, we use ServiceNow, integration into that ServiceNow. You can take a data and map it, but it sure is nice to have that work already done.
Yeah, ServiceNow integration seems to be an important developing capability for leading ITADs to adopt for sure.
Yeah, and I think the industry also can continue to evolve in the area of asset valuation, but, I will say twofold. Number one, the customer, meaning I as an IT asset manager may or may not know what the true marketability is and what wholesale and retail of those devices are in the secondary market. I'll just say in my experience, some of the ITAD suppliers treat that like it's mystery too. Like, well, we'll sell it and see what happens.
Right. And on that note, I wanted to ask, as you could tell me, when you do sell the retired assets, how do those values flow back into your budget?
Yeah, so that's something that we internally at Starbucks Coffee Company are in the midst of refining. So we do track the income because you almost have to look at it as, is that generating income on an asset that you fully depreciated? Or so there's some additional financial concerns that our financial wizards at Starbucks Coffee Company are figuring out. The best news is that, obviously the goal for any program out there, regardless of the size of the organization, is a net zero impact to your company, but we're constantly refining that. And I still think there's ways to go both sides of the fence, both from the client as well as the supplier of services.
As a high-profile ITAM manager at a Fortune 500 company, I imagine you get a lot of outreach from ITADs. So what advice would you give to aspiring ITAD providers who want to call on companies like yourselves?
Approach that a lot of aspiring business development folks, they approach me with the same old marketing stuff, which is, hey, I can sell your gear for more than the guy that you have today, right? And so they're not really looking at solving the problems that I may have. But what I would suggest for each and every one, if you really, really want to be successful, take 10 minutes if it's a publicly traded company and go do a little homework. I mean, in the 6 years I've been involved with Starbucks Coffee Company, I have never had an ITAD salesperson reach out to me and say, you have a geographical problem. You've got a lot of different type of devices. Or do you feel you're getting the values? So you can have related questions, but none of them have even come to me and said, we know that Starbucks is a Planet Positive publicly stated company. How are those metrics being measured today? Just to spark a conversation. I pretty much guarantee you, if you say that you can sell my stuff for a higher percentage and give me a penny more, I'm pretty much going to respond to it. Thanks, but no thanks.
Yeah. And when we were talking earlier, you said something interesting about ITADs must know the pond they swim in, have a niche and focus on it.
Yeah, I think that that's also very important because of the fact that, organizations can be very, very successful, even in a niche market. And when you look at a publicly traded company or some organizations that are highly sensitive, they're going to look at your organization and number one, they're going to say, am I exercising due diligence for my organization? You think about Starbucks, which is hundreds of billions of dollars in market cap value, right? Am I doing due diligence by potentially engaging in an ITAD supplier that is not publicly traded, or maybe it's 2 years old, revenues aren't there? So there's a lot of things that go into consideration. So that's the other side, is sometimes doing business with the biggest organizations doesn't mean it's good business for your organization. So to your point, Pete, know your swim lane, know where you're really good, and focus on those opportunities.
Yeah, and I'm going to do a cheap plug and mention that our last podcast on the Circular Integrity Show was basically called Riches Are in Niches, where we try to talk to ITADs about part of our sales playbook where focus on a niche where you have a strength and market leadership, and then move on to the next one. So back to the sales guy, right? So you pretty much made it clear that if you're a smaller regional player, you're probably not a good fit for Starbucks, and you probably shouldn't be calling on them. But let's go back to the handful of ITADs that have a big footprint, and their sales leader says, hey, I saw this Guilbeault guy at one of the conferences, call him. So how should the guy, what should he lead with?
Well, I do, as you mentioned, I get a chance to go to some of the conferences, and I've met with suppliers and had follow-on conversations with them. And, a lot of times what I would say is, we can have conversations, and it's a long game in some cases. So it's a matter of timing, in the sense of, okay, if you have established business relationship with other parts of Starbucks Coffee Company, how does that look if we were to expand into those type of services? What does that mean from, a relationship holistically across both organizations? Is it something is there a service or an effort that is unique, right? That your organization is kind of leading the effort on, whether that's ESG reporting or it's fair market values assessment, whatever the case may be. Now that's worth having a conversation to say, okay, the opportunity may not be, I'll put it to you this way. As a salesperson myself, when my customers told me no, this was my immediate follow-on question. Is it a no forever, or is it a no for just now? Because there's two distinctively different things. And I look at it as a no forever means, thank you very much, I will never bother you again. Or I'll have one of my peers do it a couple years from now. But if it's no for right now, well, now we can set up a cadence to say, well, look, I promise not to be a bother and send you some relevant and pertinent emails. Hey, the next time we're both at the same show, let's set some time and, kind of catch up and see how things are going. Those to me are absolutely valid relationships because, again, large organizations like Starbucks, we have contractual agreements, and those contractual agreements all have a time frame. We don't have evergreen contracts, meaning auto renewables. And so we do go out there and test the market consistently through your RFPs and your RFIs. And we want to make sure that because our goal at Starbucks, my goal specifically, is to build, a world-class IT asset management discipline at Starbucks. And that includes, management of the life cycle of hardware and software from inception to resurrection.
Reuse, reimagine. That stuff below your cut line? Meet your best partner for more cash. Keep your piece of the upside with revenue share and fast 30-day settlements. Branded reporting for partners. More options with our innovative on-site technologies. DataBot for your in-house data destruction. DataBot Go mobile version for secure on-site processing. And our DataBox service for secure, tracked, and serialized returns. Imagine your upside with early upgrade. Reuse, reimagined.
Before we wrap up, tell me what excites you the most about the future of IT asset management.
I'll tell you what, artificial intelligence, I think, is going to bring a lot of opportunity for organizations. And the one that I look at in particular is, when you think about break fix, you can kind of do metrics that say, hey, this particular device failed for this reason. What's really wonderful is artificial intelligence can take the data repository that you have and go historically across your records for multiple years and bring you some trending reports. And so that really excites me on a micro level, device per device, on how something is operating at scale.
Interesting.
Yeah, the other elements I think is that, IT asset management holistically is being more and more positively embraced in organizations, and they are slowly but surely rising and coming to the table. I'm still a big advocate that in the near future, we're going to see our first chief IT asset management officer sitting, in the C-suite. It hasn't happened yet, but I think we're getting closer.
Yeah, there's a lot of reasons why it should, Bo. Bo, I just wanted to mention that I've heard you speak at ITAM and some other events in years past, and if anybody get a chance to sit in on your sessions, they're typically excellent. So thanks for your contributions. I really appreciate you coming and joining us on the show today. It's really invaluable to have your voice speaking back to the ITAD community. It's difficult sometimes to get that end user perspective, and you've done a wonderful job of bringing that today, an end user perspective within the context of your background on our side of the business. So thanks so much for joining us on the Circular Integrity Show, and we look forward to having you back on future episodes.
Thank you so much, Pete, and I appreciate the kind words. Yeah, I try to do my best in sharing knowledge. Giving back to the industry is something that's very important to me.
Thanks, Bo. It's well appreciated. Have a great one.
You too, Pete. Thank you so much.
What an insightful conversation with Bo Guilbeault. Here's the key takeaways. First, the ITAD industry needs to evolve. API integrations, ServiceNow compatibility, and automated data reporting and fair market value capabilities, they're not nice to have anymore. They're must-haves for enterprise partnerships. Second, if you're an ITAD provider trying to break into the Fortune 500 space, stop leading with, "We pay top dollar," and start leading with solutions to real pain points. Know your niche, do your homework, and show you understand the business and have unique solutions to problems before you make that first call. Something else that resonated with me was Bo's closing thought. We're at an incredible inflection point where sustainability, technology, and business value are converging. The circular economy isn't just good ethics, it's good business. We are here to help you raise the bar on ITAD services and sales issues. If this episode added value, please subscribe, leave a review, and share it with your network. Until next time, keep doing the good work, keep the circular economy moving, and remember, sustainability isn't just good for the planet, it's good for business.
You've been listening to the Circular Integrity Show. Thanks for joining us. Don't miss our next episode coming soon, where we feature market leaders in the IT asset disposition and reseller communities. Thanks to our sponsors, Early Upgrade and MG Environmental. And special thanks to our guest, Tim Sulin of Circular Integrity. The Circular Integrity Show is produced and written by Pete Paisley. Follow Circular Integrity on LinkedIn for links to more content.